I'm Anthony Geathers.
And I'm Gregg Weiss.
And we are the hosts of CASE-4-BASS.
Hey everybody, my name is Billy Sheehan. I'm a bass player. You're here with me on CASE-4-BASS with my dear friends Anthony and Gregg. Enjoy yourself.
He's going. Yeah.
No, I don't have anything to plug into. Sorry, I just got it
That's
on.
okay.
No, but it looks good. I mean, that's the
We love it. We
All
always
right.
have bases handing by.
Hey everyone, welcome to yet another episode of CASE-4-BASS. I'm your host, Anthony Geathers, and I have my co-host, Gregg Weiss.
Gregg Weiss.
So what's
And-
happening today, Gregg?
Well, today we have a very, very special guest. We have Mr. Billy Sheehan, and he's a name that doesn't really need an introduction. He's been an inspiration to tens and thousands, maybe millions of bass players that are out there. And we're interested in what's going on, where he's been, and how he feels about the bass.
Awesome.
So,
First of all, most welcome, Billy Sheehan, to our show.
hey, thank you for coming on.
My pleasure.
First and foremost, thank you for saying yes, because I went to your meet and greet at Sam Ash a couple nights ago.
Right.
Gregg and I were talking about that prior to that, saying, Gregg sends me a link, says, hey, by the way, Billy Sheehan's going to be in the city. I was like, really? Cool. Got to get him on the show, because what we do here is we talk about bass and everything related to bass. And obviously, you have an incredible career. So let's dig in. So first and foremost, tell me about your Mr. Big tour, because you're on it right now.
Well, yeah, we're doing a farewell tour. Some people are asking why it's farewell, but I've seen a lot of bands recently that are kind of crawling over the finish line. We'd prefer to run upright over the finish line
Okay.
rather than go out when people are not at their full health, they can't sing, they're using backing tracks. So Mr. Big never has done anything like that and never will. So
Okay.
we still had to change a few keys,
Okay.
make some of the songs easier to sing.
Got it.
A lot of people do that anyway.
Okay.
That's not necessarily illegal, but
Okay.
but we wanted to do a good last run and see a lot of our friends around all the cities we played around the world for many times. We've already done. We started in Beijing, China. Then we went to Japan. Then Korea, Philippines, Taiwan, Singapore, Kuala Lumpur, Thailand,
Wow.
Indonesia, Malaysia.
Okay.
And then now we're doing the first of 2 U.S. runs.
Okay.
After this, we go to Europe. Then we go to South America.
Okay.
Then we come back to America for the last bit. And
Oh,
it's
wow.
it's a real farewell tour. So we're not just saying that so we can say farewell for 4 years.
Again and again and again.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, yeah, it isn't like a going out of sale when people say I'm going out of sale business, and then meanwhile, 10 years later, they're still going out of sale. So you're not doing that.
No, it's wanted to be a legitimate thing. We've always been really straight with our friends and fans around the world. And we wanted to go say a good thank you to everyone for a wonderful career Mr. Big has had, all of us in it. And so that's pretty much the story. And
Okay.
it's been very enjoyable. We've done mostly sellout business everywhere. So we're
Awesome.
very, very thankful for that.
Awesome. Let's dig into let's go into your past. And one of the first questions we asked on our podcast, since we are about bass, did the bass find you or did you find the bass? Because you're married very well together.
Well, I think it could go either way, but I think I would say I found it.
Okay.
We had a neighbor around the corner. His name was Joe, and he was a bass player, and he's a really cool guy. And he was my older brother's age, so he wouldn't hang out with me as I was a little kid. But he was always kind to me and always nice. And he had a Triumph motorcycle and a cool haircut and a beautiful girlfriend. And I wanted to kind of be like Joe. He was a cool guy, and he's still one of my dearest friends to this day.
Nice.
And then when I saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan, that one broadcast probably launched millions of careers. Millions of careers.
We've heard that a lot.
Yes, absolutely.
So, and there were many other things like that launched a lot of careers. But that once I saw that, the combination of the two, and I just like the sound of the bass. I was drawn to it.
Right.
At night they would be rehearsing in the basement, and I was a little kid. I had to go to bed, so I could lay there in my bed. I could hear the bass as it travels. And so it was, and I'm still every day. I mean, I have it with me in my hotel room all the time. I work every single day for hours on discovery, recovery of things I used to do, variations on a theme, new ways of doing things, doing what I'm doing backwards, sideways, every permutation you can imagine, just to learn more about music and about bass and bass playing and composition and everything. That's pretty much
never gets stale.
Yeah.
People say, would you have any hobbies? I go, yeah, well, music would be the hobby too as well.
That's fantastic.
What were your parents playing at home? Like, what were you listening to? Because you mentioned that you obviously watched the Ed Sullivan show. You fell in love with the idea that the Beatles were there. Was the sound of the Hofner bass, from Paul McCartney's Hofner bass, did that capture your attention almost immediately?
Well, in a way, it lives on in this bass, in that neck position pickup. Because the Hofner had a real super deep low end sound. It was almost like just a sine wave. You couldn't hear really harmonics or anything. You could hear for the benefit of Mr. Kite, you can hear a little harmonic content, but it's mostly like the song. Though I'm not sure if it's a Rickenbacker or a Hofner in the song Rain. It's just a super deep low end, but it's still, either way, it's a neck position pickup. So there was another bass player, Paul Samwell Smith from the Yardbirds, who had the same tone. It was a very popular tone at the time. It's super deep, ultra low end bass pickup. You didn't hear a lot of harmonic content, no harmonics at all, no string noise, no nothing. Just a solid sine wave of low end. So when I saw Paul Samwell Smith, he had an Epiphone Rivoli that just had the big, fat, giant chrome pickup there.
Wow.
So I put that on my P bass, and it now exists in this form on all my Yamaha basses. So the Hofner tone that McCartney had was certainly an influence. Every tone you heard of every bass player gave you a path to follow if you wanted to kind of emulate that. And there was a lot of different things. Jack Bruce had a similar tone, but it was more distinct.
We're not worthy.
Jack. You mentioned Jack Bruce, and the hands go up.
He's a wonderful guy. I did a cover shoot for Guitar World magazine with him, and at the photo shoot, we hung hard. We had a great time, and it's amazing how many guys like that I've been lucky enough to meet. They all kind of have the same story. They started out in a copy band and started playing, and one thing led to another. Ian Hunter, the singer from Mata Hoople, went to a party at someone's house one time, just a small gathering, and he was there. So he was the only other musician. So we stood and talked for hours, and we had almost the same story everybody has. You pick up an instrument, learn some songs that you like, get in a band, and so it was interesting for that. But anyway, back to the tone thing.
Yes.
When you heard a player with a particular tone, you either went for it or a part of it or avoided it or however you wanted to look at it. I remember the song "Hey Joe" by the Leaves.
Okay.
Amazing bass tone, super trebly, bright, and the big thunking, huge content to the notes. That was a big influence on me early on. And then Tim Bogert also was a great tone, a lot of distortion. But that the original question, the Hofner, does a shadow of it lives in all my basses to this day.
Oh, wow.
That neck position tone. I wanted to have a Hofner bass when I went to England to do some clinics back in the early 90s.
Okay.
And so I was looking around. I was going to music store doing clinics. And they all had a bunch of Hofner basses, but they were all beat up and split and broken and cost a fortune. And, they weren't in good shape. So I went to the Bass Center in London to do a clinic. And sure enough, they had a Hofner Senator on the wall, which is the same electronics and neck as the Beatle bass, as far as I can see, and a different body style. The Stuart Sutcliffe body style, which was a single cutaway, bigger, thicker. I said, so how much do you want for that? And they go, 200 pounds. I said, sold.
Sold. Yeah, you're not passing that up.
I'm passing that up. No, not at all. So, Gregg, now it's your turn. So we have to go back and forth between the two of us.
I'm going to start back and see if it leads to something more present. Was John Entwistle was a big player with that whole My Generation sound and coming up with the bass solo when there really weren't bass solos and songs. And he's one of these players that I try and dig in when I ask questions about how when he moved forward in time, a lot of technology in not only the bass, but the amplification moved forward. And one of the videos that I saw you do was at BB King's when you did the Amazing Journey show with Paul Gilbert and Mike Portnoy. And from an onlooker's perspective, it's not just a tribute, but an emulation. If you could talk about what it's like to hear somebody and then actually playing their music.
Well, he early on in Talas, we specialized in a lot of the Who songs. We did the My Generation medley from Live at Leeds. We made up another version of a medley that started with Pinball Wizard and went into Summertime Blues and Won't Get Fooled Again. And I played a lot of Who songs through the years. I saw them, the original lineup with Keith Moon. And I forgot who the opening act was. I think Taj Mahal was the opening act.
Right.
And just great experience to see him. I remember the Who's Next record was one of the records in my old apartment. I would just put it on and play to it. Play to the whole side, start the side over, play to the whole thing, play over, play both sides. Just play bass along with those songs.
All day, all night.
That's a great. People don't do it enough now. Younger players, a lot of younger players don't know songs. They don't. They know the most unbelievable stuff beyond human ability, but they don't know any songs.
They don't know songs, and they don't know how to play with a group.
That's true. That too.
That bass was a social thing back in the day. And to be better kind of improved your social standings.
Yeah, that's very true. Now, I'm an old man, so maybe it's just an old man complaining about these young kids today, because I know the old men when I was young were complaining about what we were doing too. So
yeah,
who knows? Maybe they're right and we're wrong, and it could very, very much be the possibility. But Entwistle's tone was a big deal. When the Alembics first came out, they all had a dual output. I think he had some kind of alembic situation for a while. All the Rickenbackers had a dual output. And my bass had a dual output since 71, since I added that extra pickup. So I believe he did some kind of a signal splitting, where he had some amps doing distortion and other amps clean. And it's a logical progression. That's what I've done, again, since 71. It's a logical progression because you want that tone of the grind, but as soon as you start to get some distortion, it's sine wave is no longer a sine wave, and it doesn't travel the same. It doesn't hold the room together and shake the walls anymore. So you kind of need that double thing. I just saw some rap, hip hop, R&B rap gentleman explaining how he gets his bass tones on his records. I forgot the guy's name. I should have saved it. It was on scrolling through TikTok or something. But he explains how he gets this super deep low end, and he stops there, and then he adds a distorted mid-range on top of it, and that's exactly what I've been doing. That's exactly what the Alembic dual output, Rickenbacker, what Entwistle did. John Paul Jones split his jazz pickups to 2 different amps. Very common way. So nobody necessarily invented it, but it's a logical
progression. Yeah. I had seen you the first time I witnessed Mr. Big. I think it was their first album. I saw you guys at the Stone Pony, and Enough's Enough had opened for you guys. And I got there like 2 hours early, standing in front of an empty stage until you guys came up. And basically you sweat on me for 3 hours. And I haven't showered since. It was great. And, but what I noticed was you had this setup, but you had the 815s going. And it was you were using this split signal because I think you had 2 or 3 tiers of equipment to power it. And it just like, I'm looking in back and I'm just getting into it. But when you're able to control all these mixes of signal, it comes across as so unique and original. Can you is that something you're still doing today?
Yeah, basically the same setup. I have my distorted signal split between clean and distorted without much low end at all. It cuts off at about 300 cycle.
Wow.
So when you're listening to it's just a little thing. But it's like if you listen to them ring out the PA at a sound system and you listen to just the horns, you go, wow, that's awful. That is terrible. Or you listen to just the subwoofers and go, man, I can't make out even what it is. Combine them. So, I get it. That's the sound that there is. And it's pretty much that. So I had the high-ended stereo in that I split the signal, sent it to right and left inputs of a power amp, which had its own, they each have their own speakers. And on the left, I had an Eventide harmonizer wavering a little bit out of tune. So you get this effect of a stereo.
That's so cool.
But
well, you're filling a lot, especially in there's not a lot of members in the band. You're not going out with a horn section or rhythm guitars, and the bass really has to cover a lot of ground.
Exactly. That was another factor in that we, back in the old days with Talas, we'd get accused of having somebody else like behind the amps or behind a curtain.
That's cool. Though.
I took it as a compliment.
That's cool.
We would do and then again, even playing wise, to have to cover a lot of songs, like we said earlier, as a 3-piece band, I had to do more stuff rather than just play the root note or the basic line. For Carry On Wayward Son, hit the keyboard hits on top of it, along with playing the bass lines. And so that was another factor in making that tone worthwhile. So that bass would never go away. If you're playing high notes, that super deep low end is always in there.
You brought back a memory, and that memory was you came out as an encore and you did Barbara O'Reilly.
Yeah.
And it was so cool to hear the parts reversed that you would hear normally on the keyboard on that ARP synthesizer. You're listening to the bass. And it was just you knew something was happening on stage that you wanted to be part of, even from a fan perspective.
And there was another factor as well. Back in the day, we did this for a living. So a 3-piece band, if you make $100, you got $33 each. So a 4-piece band, only 25.
Some of us are still there.
So we try to economize in that respect. And as much as that's half a joke, it's really true that we were remunerated better because we didn't have to pay a lot of guys and carry a lot of gear. We could get by we did Schizoid Man by King Crimson 3-piece, You know,
Oh my God.
we did White Punks on Dope.
Oh, nice. The tubes.
Of course, with the tubes. You know, all these adventurous songs that not a lot of three-piece bands would go in there. We also did a lot of Grand Funk too. But,
Yeah. No, I hear you. I hear you. That's great.
Let's talk about the evolution of your bass style, because you literally became the Eddie Van Halen of bass, meets a bunch of other bass players, and you kind of melded that into metal and rock, where it's not. It was, at that time, that was completely unheard of. Like what was the process from you going from just playing standard bass to now tapping up the neck, bending the neck, where you're bending these beautiful deep tone bends.
Harmonics library that's like not even like accountable.
I mean, like, yeah, it's just gorgeous. Like, where did you what was the process of evolution where you got to that point of doing all that?
Well, I listened to a lot of different instruments, and not just bass. I'm a big piano fan, cello fan, sax fan, guitar, of course, a lot of different things. So I usually look at any instrument as a full range instrument. Bass isn't really a full range instrument, but once you add the harmonics, you get a little bit more range.
Sure.
I'm not necessarily a fan of trying to get everything out of one instrument, other than a piano, which has such a full range it will do everything. Okay. Some instruments similar to that. But I see a lot of guys now taking a bass and using it as a solo instrument to play music and songs on. It's really cool and amazing what they do, but it doesn't necessarily sound great. I mean, I'm sure you could do Paganini caprices on timpani.
Yeah.
But does that sound does that sound work for, you know, they're done on a violin for a reason. I mean, you can.
Yeah. It isn't going to generate the emotion. Like, it isn't going to generate the feeling that you get from playing on the original instrument. Absolutely.
So, but when I see people do that, it's mind blowing. It's incredible. And I think it's a great thing to do also, because it just opens up the neck and there's so many more possibilities.
Harmonics and the possibilities.
So, so early on, I would do some counterpoint, like a Bach piece. Brandenburg concertos are one of my favorites. Just learn the cello solo for, I forgot which number piece it is. Some Mussorgsky. I fell in love with Ravel and Claude Debussy. Still blows my mind. So on bass, you know, just to emulate some of those pieces, because I love them so much, I would do a little chunks of that. The toccata and fugue in D minor.
Yes. You had familiarity with it.
So it helped me to move into different places of the keyboard. But because I was always in a band, we couldn't lose that low end. So I was always forced to always keep it bass. Later on, when I started doing unaccompanied solos, which was pretty early on, I didn't have to worry about holding the low end on. I could just do my crazy nonsense and give the guys in the band a break to go get a beer, and they'd come back, and we go back into songs to fill the dance floor up again. So the club owner would get mad.
We've all been there.
I just I don't think any instrument really has any limitations if you want to go for it. I'm following some guy on Instagram. He's a Greek gentleman, and he's playing the bouzouki like a fiend.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yes. So.
Oh my God, it's unbelievable, mind blowing. And there must be about 50 bass players that are doing the impossible, and guitarists a guy named Marcin. I'm not sure where he's from. Plays acoustic guitar, and just is.
Oh, he's got a lot of percussive slapping on it, and
so great, so great, and inspiration to all musicians when they see things like that. It's really
good.
But in the end, you know, I just I started to break out of the solid, just regular bass thing. One of the things that did it for me, I got the first Santana record, and I just loved it so much. I've always had a thing for kind of Latin music, for world music, for Celtic stuff. I've got a huge collection of music from almost every country in the world.
Wow.
Nice.
And,
Nice.
Indian music, I took an instant liking to when I was very young. So uh, hearing some of those things done just kind of moved me to different places on the neck and different ideas of doing things. The drone of the sitar having one. Stuff like that. I El Shankar, violinist that played with Frank Zappa for a while, I believe. I think Zappa referred to him as the greatest musician he ever knew. Wow. Indian violinist, mind blowing, and some of the vocals too. Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan, I think he's a Pakistani, a Sufi vocalist. Impossible. So stuff like that, I've always been intrigued by, and I've always used it as a source of inspiration. So some of that stuff leaks into, and so how and why you can get out of just. And in Nashville, there's a saying: "There's no money above the 5th fret."
Yeah, low register, the cash register.
Probably right, but I may be maybe a slight exception. I managed to eke out a career, but I'm mostly below the 5th fret.
Every time they say that, they show a top legend player above the 12th fret, really expressing it. So, it's a thing. A question I want to ask, and how this show got started was Anthony and I talk on the phone for hours about this stuff, and we decided to put it on air because we're both gig and bass players for a number of years. Anthony tours in Europe a lot, and I'm a upstate New York bar basher, which you may remember, and one of the videos that I caught was you did when I was first following you when you were in California, you did a lot of musician jams and a lot of players would come up. But the one I recently discovered from a friend of mine was the benefit you did with Pat Torpey on drums, but you had Eddie Van Halen and Steve Lukather on guitar. And there's this 45-minute set of just what we call no safety valve, unfiltered, unleashed cover tunes, and the question is how is that a different experience from, let's say, going on with Mr. Big?
Well, there's no form to it really. We just again, all 4 people involved in that, pardon me, myself included, I know a lot of songs.
Exactly.
And hundreds and hundreds of songs we played.
Exactly.
And
you have to. Call them out. You're playing.
I got Van Halen recordings from when they were in the clubs, and they were playing almost a Talas set list. Funk 49 by the James Gang.
Nice.
Walk Away by the James. So almost all the songs we did, they were pretty common for almost all bar bands.
Still are.
And so that is a real formative step for all players. Sure. And in almost every other art form, that is acknowledged very strongly. Hunter S. Thompson, who wrote the book Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
Las Vegas.
I don't know. I forgot what book it was that he did this with, but he took something on the order of War and Peace, some huge tome of literature, sat down with a typewriter and typed a copy of the entire book to get the feel of what it would be like to write a novel like that.
Okay. Awesome.
Brilliant.
Just to absorb the energy.
That too, I'm sure, but just to get the idea. So when all of us were in clubs playing copy bands, playing Beatles tunes, we played Beatles, Stones, Bebop Deluxe, Kansas, Crosby, Stills and Nash, Neil Young, Grand Funk. It was such a killer set.
I mean, whether it was on the fly or, it didn't look like there was a heavy list, but when you hear top players playing classic tunes at an advanced level, it opens up this energy window that you're looking at. And from my perspective anyway, was just, I love seeing that, because they're not just doing their job, they're expressing their passions.
Yeah. And I think growing up like that and playing copy tunes is actually a blast.
Mm-hmm.
In a bar. And
that's what I'm driving at.
it was so much fun. And we'd take a break and have a couple drinks and go back up, and there's girls dancing and socializing and hanging, and it was a scene. and everybody went, and everybody was there. You get done and hang out with people till 2 or 3 in the morning. Go to somebody's house, whatever.
Yeah.
They repeat. We did 21 shows in a row once. That was our record. We did 3 full shows in one day.
My God.
Wow.
Early morning, one M&T Plaza in Buffalo, New York, play for the noon people out in front of this bank. Then we packed up and went to Niagara Falls to play for a Buffalo Bills after practice little concert.
Oh, wow.
And then left from there, went to the Club Lakewood in Niagara Falls and played till 2 o'clock in the morning. So that was one day. And that was all copy tunes. So we weren't doing any original songs.
Yeah.
So you really get used to it. So the jam we did together, myself, Ed, Steve, and Pat, nobody had to go and listen to any of the songs.
Exactly.
Yeah, we know that one, no problem. And that's another good thing, is when you're becoming socialized with other musicians and you have songs in common that you know, and somebody yells out, a song.
Anyone.
Hey Ho, Let's Go by the Ramones. Okay, we know it. No, it's a piece of cake, or a Hendrix tune, or a Zeppelin.
Yeah. Well, I was shocked by the I Want You, the Beatles tune that Steve ripped out, and it was like, nobody plays that. He said that. He goes, nobody plays this song, and like, because there's bass jam in it. There's a lot of passing of the torch to really make that happen, and just for me to hear that, not just as a bass player but a rock fan, is you always want to hear where they came from to see where they're going.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very true.
Let's talk about the evolution of your actual Yamaha, because you've been a Yamaha endorsed guy for a long period of time. Did you start off with a Fender on the Fender DNA? So let's talk about your evolution from Fenders up until where you are now.
Well, the Fender is kind of the standard.
Yes.
4-string Fender P bass, probably been on more hit records than by such a wide margin. I mean, it's not even close. It's probably 95%, I'd say, at least. Now, all the other basses are wonderful and great. Bass players, they like to get into fights and wars over 4-string, 5-string, 6-string. They'll think of, and if they can't fight over that, they'll think of something else to fight over.
So true.
But the P bass was the standard. That's what started it all. That became the most thing. So of course, that's the first bass I got, and I loved it. But I loved the sound of that EBO Epiphone Rivoli, because before my bass got delivered, the music store let me take a Rivoli home to play until my bass came in. And that low thing, I just shook the whole house. It was amazing. So
Awesome.
I eventually added that pickup onto the P bass here. Just chiseled it out. I didn't know how to wire it. So I wired 2 outputs because I didn't know how to put both of them together. And but this is a very P bassy bass.
Yes, absolutely.
The cutaway goes in deeper. It's got that high E note on the G string, that one extra fret, which makes a huge difference, because in rock, almost E is a very standard key in rock.
Yeah.
And have that high E note, which you can bend up to a G pretty easily. So that helps. And we modeled this neck after a 1968 Telecaster bass neck. The Tele basses were known for having a big baseball bat, fat,
big
giant
neck.
Yes.
And I love that. And people with small hands get afraid of when I go, you never have to do this stretch ever, maybe once per career, if that. And going around your hand, you can hit every note. It doesn't matter how big or small your hand is. So people, it's more of a psychological thing, because the sustain you get when you get a big fat giant neck with lots of mass behind it, because the strings are attached up here too. People are worried about the mass of the body for sustain. Well, the strings travel over way more neck and anchor at the top of the neck. So the neck would almost be more important. I could very well be severely wrong on that, but I'm just making that assumption. So having the big fat telly neck was a really cool thing. I got the idea from seeing Tim Bogart on the back of the Beck Bogart and Appice record. He had
What
what
a
I
record.
thought was a P bass and a telly
Yeah.
neck.
Yeah.
Told me later when I was lucky enough to become friends with him that it wasn't. They just changed the headstock around and it was kind of P
Oh
bass.
wow.
I didn't know, so I got the telly neck, and I was every time I'd see it because they
That's
were
something.
cheap for a while back in the day. Every time I see a cheap telly neck, I'd buy it, take the neck off, and put it on a Peabody. And I've got a sister to my original P bass, which is a duplicate of it. And I just finished up putting together a bunch of instruments with the Peabodys and telly necks.
Will that original bass be donated to the Smithsonian, we hope?
Not while I'm alive, that's for sure.
Well, regardless, it's definitely a piece of history.
Yep, awesome. So now, in reference to, because the day we met, the day you were doing your meet and greet, Larry Harkey was there. So let's talk about your amplification, your relationship with Harkey. What was your first purchase of your amplifier? Like, what was the first
Harkey experience?
Yes.
Yeah, well, when I got my first bass, I got my first real amp. Now, I had a bass and an amp before that, but I don't even count them. It was a Hagstrom bass.
Yes.
Which is tiny. Very nice, but it was tiny. And a Gretsch Pro bass with a single 15 in it, which is pretty useless too. So when I actually got my first real bass, my P bass, and a Fender Super Bassman, which is a 100-watt bassman, had a much larger, taller head, silver face, 2 JBL 15s, because at the time you could order your Fender cabinets with JBLs in them. I got the 2 JBLs, and they had copper-colored cones, which were very good. And then I got another cabinet also, so I had 2 cabinets. That was my first big thing. And it was loud and sounded good and everything, but then this new thing came along. People kept talking about this SVT thing, these new SVTs.
Oh, yeah, man. Yeah.
A friend of mine had one. His name was Tom Trippy. And I said, Tom, can I borrow your amp and cabinet for a gig? Oh, sure. So we put it in the back of the car, and I plugged into that thing, and it's like the world was coming to an end.
Yeah.
It was so loud and so precise and so great. So I went all SVT for years. I had 6 cabinets stacked up. I didn't use them all. I just had them there because a lot of times stacking gear up on stage was psychological factor for the audience and other players. So, but then they started blowing speakers.
Okay.
And as tube amps tend to do. And then I had to get the tubes rebiased every couple of weeks because they're in a van bouncing around. And it became difficult. So I thought about, I'd have to think this through what the original inspiration was. I started to go with pro audio gear. So I had an SVT through an SVT cabinet, but underneath it for the low end, I had a BGW 750 power amp, which is just a monster, a custom preamp, and a Altec horn cabinets with Gauss speakers.
Wow.
Gauss was a competitor to JBL for a while.
Yeah, that was a thing.
All pro audio. So then eventually I went with preamps and a lot of other audio devices to take the place of the high-end tonality and custom preamps made for me by a company in Rochester, New York. And then it became all rack mounted. And I went back to the SVT for a little while when St. Louis Music bought them. I still used a lot of rack equipment. And then they were sold out to, I think, Loud Technologies was the name, and their quality control just went away. And I was doing a clinic with a brand new one, and it died on me in front of everyone.
Wow!
And so Larry Harkey heard that I was maybe looking for some other amp other than SVT, and he called me and said, "Hey, no, you don't have to do a deal or anything. If you need some amps, I'll be happy to send them along. You don't owe me anything. Just give them a try." And so I did try a couple of other amps. It was by major manufacturers. Some of them failed as I plugged them in and tried them brand new.
Really? Out of the box?
Amazing.
That's fascinating.
I don't want to mention their names because a lot of companies get down. Sometimes they have a downtime. They get, it's not necessarily
Right. You figured somebody would check it if it's going out to an endorse. Yeah, you'd think.
So in the end, I just said, Larry, send me a couple of whatever and some cabinets, and they were rock solid. I've been on tour since February, hundreds of shows with the new Class D.
Yeah, the light ones.
Eight not a single problem.
Really?
Nice.
Wow.
Nothing.
Nice.
And their new lightweight cabinets too. They're really great. They sound good. Now most of my tonality is coming from the Helix. And the reason for that is I had a rack that was much taller than I, and I'm 6'1", and custom preamps and custom crossover and compressor, all pro audio stuff, and it was really great. But it takes a lot to ship that stuff around. You're playing overseas, you got to ship it. It costs a fortune. We had, I think, a $45,000 or $50,000 bill to get our gear to Europe and back. That's just
and it showed up.
Yeah.
And then it's also a slow thing. So when Helix came out, I was a big fan of Line 6 right away when they did the bass pod and the guitar pod, the little kidney shape. Because at home recording, it was great. It sounded fantastic. On my solo record, holy cow, Billy Gibbons came over to my house and played a solo on a track, and he plugged into the pod with a $150 fake Chinese Strat from Guitar Center. With the standard tuning tuned down to B, so the strings are flopping around. I play that song for people. They go, "Hey, guess the guitar player." In about half a millisecond, they go, "Is that Billy Gibbons?" Instantly recognize. That's how amazing he is. But when Line 6 came out with the Helix, I was intrigued by it. I said, my original Pierce preamp, this was my main preamp for everything since 1979, every record, everything. It just sang beautifully. The clean tone was as clean as you could get. The lows were amazing. It was just a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful piece of gear. So I said to the line, "Could you model my Pierce and put that into the?"
Oh wow!
And they said, "Yeah," and they did. So my preamp is in every Helix. So if you want my original Dan Pierce custom modified preamp,
wow,
in there. So that allows me to just get the Helix and anywhere and drop my software or my patches into it, and I've got my full rack. Then they did that also with one of my compressors, which happened to be by Ashley Audio.
Okay.
So you'll see under Rochester Comp, that's my Ashley Audio compressor in there as well.
Nice.
So the two vital things that I really needed that had a personality that was difficult to get from anything else, that compressor and that preamp, they're built into the Helix. So now I use the Helix for all my front end. I use the Harkey Class D amps, and then the Harkey, they're lightweight cabinets, and it's been glorious.
Awesome. I have a question from one of our group, one of our CASE-4-BASS group members. His name is Adam Bronner. He wants to know if and when you'll ever put out another Niacin album.
I don't know. The keyboard player lives in Nashville, where I live now too. I see him around once in a while, and we did a special benefit show for sadly for someone who lost their life. And Dennis flew in, and we did like 4 or 5 Niacin songs for it. So it was. We're still in touch. I love that band. And playing with Dennis changed my life.
The great videos. The Live in Tokyo.
Yeah.
Was just it's just awe-inspiring to hear you in another venue, in another style of outside Loud and Proud to a more what's the term? I don't want to say jazzy, but it's very progressive.
I bet for sure. And Dennis was I played with straight up 2/4 rock drummers my whole life, and suddenly Dennis Chambers comes along. And there's a whole new, different way of looking at time.
Yeah.
Man, I was like, the whole world opened up to me. And I learned so much from him. The main thing I learned, we did this song, I forgot what it was called, a weird name. But it was just this repeating leap. Claghorn, that was the name of it. And then we'd stop, and Dennis would go. Now, we're still playing behind him quietly. And Dennis knew I was getting my time from him. I was relying on him for what the tempo was, what the changes were, what the time was, and he knew it. And he was about to punish me for making such a terrible mistake. So we went, do chicka chicka do da da da. Here he goes, da 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 da. He starts the solo, and he knew where he was, and he was in time, but he was doing a speed up, slow down, syncopated, and he
playing
knew
around it and through it.
I was utterly lost.
Wow.
And I'm sitting at the baked potato with people sitting a foot and a half away from me, and I'm completely lost. And he's looking at me, smiling. You don't know where you are, do you? I'm going to kill you later. And, fair enough. On the break, he goes, you don't know. So he eventually had mercy on me and indicated to me where he was. And so I said, okay, that's never going to happen to me again. So from then on, I keep time myself, sync it with the rest of the band, and that's how I keep time. But my foot is always moving. Something's always moving. I'm always in my own thing, connected, but never will I rely on somebody else to give me the time. And I think that is a very important lesson to learn.
Awesome.
Even though I probably, had done that, but had lost sight of it. But Dennis was every time I played with him, I would learn more about feel and how he would cut things up, and his dedication is just brilliance. He's really one of the greatest musicians I've ever known, maybe the greatest musician.
Oh, wow. Can I talk about the Musicians Institute thing we did with Stanley Clarke? That was what you had Billy Bromberg there, Flea, Alex Al. I mean, all these high-level bass players. If you would have bombed that building, you would have killed the world's elite bass players. How did it feel for you to be with Stanley Clarke and all those bass player greats, and your solo was ripping? I mean, it was super, super unique. I mean, how did it feel with all those bass players in that building? And then you came on to do solo, and he was like, Billy Sheehan, come on. He walks you out there, and you're up there. You just ripped it. Yeah.
Well, viva la difference. I love hearing other players and hear the road they go down, because that's not my road, and I'm fascinated by it. Like, wow, how did you? Who's the bass player? Garrison, who plays kind of with his thumb.
Yes. Yep.
Wow, what a great player, man! Just amazing, mind blowing, and a bunch of other guys. Victor, of course. And the usual suspects, but there's another 40 or 50 brand new guys too that are just amazing. Yes. So the solo that I do, or the way that I approach it, is just kind of been a naturally occurring thing. I never really know what I'm going to do. I have pieces and parts that I can reassemble, but what goes on between them sometimes is unknown to me. And I like that in that it forces me to be in the moment. I got to think on my feet. It's not like I learned this long solo. I'm going to do that solo that I learned and practice and learn. There's a real art to that. I'm not dismissing that in any way, shape, or form. That to be able to duplicate a piece over and over so precisely, that's amazing. That's quite an incredible thing and accomplishment. But I'm more of an improv player. So my challenge is to think of something. What about this? And when you're live and you're in front of people, there has to be some kind of a certainty built into your understanding of what you're doing to have the confidence to just start moving around where you really don't know where it's going to end.
Vinny Colaiuta calls that thought versus flow. That if you think, you're dead, so you got to keep You just got to go with what you know.
Yeah, I say, if you think, you stink.
If you think you stink.
I like that.
True.
If you think you stink.
Very true.
You should make that into a T-shirt. If you think you stink.
Say again?
You should make that into
A T-shirt.
You think you stink.
Yeah, I've used that quote, and you see it happening. And I see players when they're thinking. You can see it when they're
Oh,
thinking.
a lot.
You know, and they're kind of thinking, no, I'm
stride.
You're out of the moment. It's like if you're watching an actor read his lines, but behind the camera is a thing with the words on it.
Teleprompter.
Yeah.
Not really saying it from the heart. I don't know. So some can get away with it, I'm sure, but reading off a teleprompter or speaking from your heart is a great parallel and analogy to that. So you're speaking from your heart when you're making it up. And most anybody can do it. I mean, people, younger players will ask me, well, how do I improvise? I say, well, you start by just playing and learning some songs and doing the things. And then while you're doing that, do a little change and do something else and then go off on your own. It's not unlike speaking, because right now we're improvising. We're not have any script.
Yeah.
No, we don't script.
We don't
I'm going to ask a question. It was we were talking about all kinds of topics, and one of the things that I've been listening to on and off again, but because you're here, it gets revisited. Is I think it was Mr. Big. You're opening up for Rush, and somebody says to Billy Sheehan, "Geddy Lee isn't here. We need you to sound check." And could you talk about how that happened?
Yeah, there was a bicycle, and I was just riding it around the arena, and Geddy was stuck in traffic coming down from LA. He said, "Hey, Billy, come here a minute." I said, we need to have somebody play the bass to do the sound check. I go, "Oh, I'll be glad to." And it was, I think it was one of Geddy's wall basses.
That's the rumor. That's the story, you know.
Yeah. And it was cool. They were the nicest people in the world. Alex and Neil, we just kind of got up there, and Neil did a beat, and we just played, and they were just wonderful people. Geddy is a saint. They all are. And they were so kind to us. They let us come up and play with them on the encore. I don't know if they did that with any other band ever before.
I had seen you guys at the Meadowlands in New Jersey when that's when they called it. I don't know what they call it now, MetLife Center or something. But I don't know where that occurred, but to hear, the interaction with another player, because being a hardcore Rush fan at the time, you would never think that somebody was going to break into that sphere of, let alone playing with them, sound checking for them, and to hear what you play, from a bass player fan's perspective, there's such a unique on that third identity on that stage that's like, well, nobody else but Billy Sheehan could really do it anyway.
Oh, I don't think that's true. I think anybody could have gone out there and played, and I think it would have adapted itself to
what they were doing,
component parts. It was just, they were just so kind to us. I remember our first couple of shows, Geddy came up to me or Alex or somebody said, "Well, where have you guys been? We get done with the show and you're not around anywhere." And I go, "Well, we didn't, we're in the dressing room." "Oh, you mean we can go in there?" I go, "Yeah, sure." That was a mistake. So we're in there,
pierce the veil,
and lobster and eating all their stuff and everything. But they were so great and so generous to us and so kind. I recently had a email exchange with Geddy, and we reminisced on how much fun that was and how they'd stop about, I don't know, 10, 15 or 20 miles before they got to the venue and let Neil off on his bike. And the bus, he'd ride in. So he'd ride to the venue, show his pass, and go inside. And the crew was great. They were so kind to us and so nice, and they let us do encores and everything. A funny thing happened recently. Eddie Trunk posted about us after we played his 40-year anniversary, and somebody
Mm.
commented, "Yeah, I saw Mr. Big open for Rush, and they got booed off the stage." So, and I was like, it simply never happened. We never stage. It's just not this. First of all, the Rush audience are classy, polite people.
Yes,
Yeah.
they are.
They were very kind.
Yes, we are. Yes.
Extremely thankful that they were. On top of it, so then everybody else started chiming in. I was at that show. That's bullshit. That never happened. And somebody found the video of that show.
Oh my God.
There isn't a boo where the people are roaring and cheering. So it was. Once in a while, you win one of those internet fights. You know.
Yeah. Well,
But
you know,
they
like you said, there's always haters out there, but you know, Rush not only has a big fan base, but you know, a lot of people accepted Mr. Big, especially after, you know, I mean, the big breakout was the David Lee Roth band, and it established a lot of new elites that were coming into the late 80s with the MTV scene, you know, and it was just, I mean, for me anyway, I'll get personal. Eat 'em and Smile is just like one of the great bass albums, you know, and I love it. I still listen to it. I listen to a lot of things that you play, and there's just so much original spark. So, you know, that's, you know, it just transcended into all the groups you did. And then, you know, it was Mr. Big, Sons of Apollo. I'm always fascinated by like little niche projects. You did Jailbreak with Dug Pinnick.
With Dug Pinnick, yes. And
yeah.
Doug was on our show recently.
And we just interviewed Doug, and his insights into being a musician were just priceless. You know, that you
people in the world. We did
100%.
We did Van Halen Light Up the Sky with me, Dug Pinnick singing, Yngwie on guitar, and Vinnie Colaiuta on drums.
Oh wow.
That was amazing, because I got to the studio. Actually, the engineer that engineered it, he was at one of our shows the other night. Brett Chason, who's a great guy. We showed up, and it was just me and Vinny. And I said, "So you learned the song?" And he goes, "No, I'm not sure what song it is." I go, "So you had never heard
Oh my
it?
God.
Never heard the song before?"
You're kidding.
Light Up the Sky. So they played it for him once. He walked in, cut it. You guys later. That's
Wow.
how badass he is.
There's an extended ending on that song that's really killer.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome.
Great.
This is
Doug
our last
sang is so
question.
great.
We're coming to the end of our awesome meetings. I don't want to hold you back from the rest of your day. I know you got a lot of things.
That's
ahead.
okay. I'm doing good now. Now we finally got our
Yeah.
audio video squared away. I'm good. Let me know.
So,
Dude, you rule.
the one thing I want to ask you about, when did you realize, because as we discussed bass players, when did you realize that you are now becoming the working bass player? This is what you do for a living. This is your life. This is your passion. This is your income. Was there a point in time where it just kind of clicked in, where you said, "Holy shit, this is what I do, and my life is awesome"?
Well, it was a gradual build. You know, I lived at home, and then went out and got my own apartment. I was making enough money playing in a band, and then the band got bigger, and you know, we didn't necessarily get a lot more money, because those two don't always parallel money,
No, they don't.
your pay and your fame. But we did really good locally. We started to spread out and get to other cities, and we had a 300-mile radius and a 500 and an 800-mile radius around
That's
Buffalo
awesome.
to get to. So we got up into Canada, over to Chicago, down to Boston, down to St. Louis, all over the place. So we started to make a regional name for ourselves in Talas, which is really, really great. And but there was always a sense of precarious worry, because I didn't own a home. I was renting an apartment, you know, and I didn't have a huge, I still have some of my check registers from back in the day, and it'd be like, deposit $100, a $20 phone bill, $80 balance, $10. It was dribbling money. And I spent most of my money on gear anyway. I didn't even own a car till I was 25, but I had a truckload of gear. So it was always a little precarious. So I never really felt like anything was settled or righteous. I knew I was, I forgot the name of the uh, admiral who had his soldiers on the ships to go to war, and he'd burn the ships. So it was either win or die in the battle. There's no going back. So I felt like that a lot. That like I either get to the end, or I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. I don't know how I'm going to, because I didn't develop any other skills really necessarily. I mean, I'm generally a pretty good home handyman. I have enough of a aptitude that I can figure things out that I'd need to, but still it was precarious. So when we did the Van Halen tour, and the fact that Ed after that would take my phone call was a huge lift to my life, because I know at least I got a connection with one guy that's the grandmaster, who's my total hero, and I love his playing, I love his band. It really helped me a lot. I'm forever indebted to Ed, just because he was a good guy to me and would take my call and talk to me. That meant the world to me, and that inspired me to just keep on going no matter what. Then when I finally, out of nowhere, one week we got 3 phone calls. One was from the William Morris Agency. They want to represent us and have us open up for Yngwie on his first USA tour. Cool. Another one from Danny Goldberg from Gold Mountain Records. He went on to manage Nirvana later. They want to sign us. Wow, we got a record deal. Third one from Dave, from his office, not from him, and saying, Dave wants to talk to you about being in his movie. What? Hey, that was the cover story, because I didn't know, but he's quit Van Halen. He was going to start a new band. He called me, flew me out, finally said, yeah, there is a movie, but I want to start a band. Let's find a guitar player and a drummer and go out and do it. And I said, I'm in. So at that point, even then, it wasn't fully settled that anything was written in stone. I don't think it was until I was well within Mr. Big and we were on our second or third record that I felt comfortable enough to say, okay, I think I'm okay. I remember we had a hit with To Be With You, and I put some money down for my first house. And I've still always been very frugal, coming from those days when I didn't know what was going to happen. So even today, the last bit of ketchup on the last bit of the toothpaste.
Yeah, man.
Just used to being broke, So
keeping it real, though,
But it's good to be broke. It's good to be broke at a time in your life, because you really start to appreciate things when you have them, And I got beautiful instruments now from Yamaha and great gear, and I used to have to just suffer financial loss by the amount of money I spent on my gear and everything, and became precarious, but I had to do it. And so, it wasn't until well into it. I think we did the Tonight Show, and I sat in chair number 1. And at that point, I said, well, maybe I can start to relax a little now.
Wow. Okay, good for you. So
that's fantastic.
That was your moment to exhale, where you can kind of relax and say, do you ever feel that you've made it, when you say I've reached the point where my life is like I've actually finally made it, as opposed to like there's the working part and there's the rock star part. Like we always need.
Well, I've always been vehemently opposed to rock star. That idea. I always say I'm a bass player, I'm a working musician, and that's what I've always been. I'll always be, because rock star conjures up snootiness and arrogance and shit like that. It's not me. I would never be so stupid as to think that I was some hot thing, because all I have to do is go listen to Niels Henning Orsted Pedersen.
With Joe Pass playing Donald
Oh
Lee.
My God! Or
oh my God,
the Chinese pianist Yu Wang.
Yeah, mind
blowing, unreal. Jazz, Connie Han, Chinese woman again.
Connie Han. Yeah, unbelievable.
So I would never be so stupid as to fool myself into thinking I had everything I could possibly have, or certainly what others have. And I think it's a good thing for people to adapt that point of view, because it really is, I think you're deluding yourself when you think you're hot stuff, or you think you got it made, or you're a badass. We all have our.
I'm going to suggest the opposite, because I've been a friend of Billy Sheehan's on Facebook. along with the tens of thousands of people that follow him. And Billy Sheehan is the only human being who answers the comments. And I have to thank you for that. If I'm taking it from 10,000 people who listen and follow and see you what you're doing on social media, that there are hundreds and hundreds of other performers who will post on one, reflected on another, and it all flies in the abyss. But Billy Sheehan listens, reads, and responds to comments. And I want to thank you for that, because it shows it shows the authenticity of what you were just talking about and what Ed Anthony asked you.
Well, there is a gain to be had from it too. I have my thumb on the pulse of what's going on.
Yeah.
So if something ain't working, or people don't like something, I know right away. Not that I would pander to them and change as a result, but at least give me an opportunity to re-examine something and determine whether or not they may be right.
Well, I would say on cooking advice, you're spot on. Number one, you eat organic. The food you cook looks amazing, and when you take breaks of practicing to feed the wildlife, it's truly entertaining. So from that perspective, it definitely brings a one-on-one perspective to your audience.
Speaking of that, let's talk about that as well, because you mentioned the whole idea of organic cooking. Gregg and I are both. Gregg's a heart transplant.
I have a heart transplant.
We have another podcast called Change of Heart podcast. We talk about hearts. I'm a big fan of cooking and dieting in that sense. When did you get into that? When did you make the transition into traveling, being on the road? Because we know how it is on the road. A lot of times it's late nights, it's bad eating, and then at some point you got to get older, number one. And then you have to realize that I need to change my lifestyle to maintain this lifestyle so I can be healthy. When did you get involved in that?
Well, I grew up a lot on my own. I was on my own a lot when I was very young. And so I had the opportunity to either go hungry or cook something. So I right away, and so I went with the easy things, Kraft macaroni and cheese, but then I would right away start to doctor it up. What is this powdery cheese? What if I melted some cheddar and poured that in? And what if I diced up some chicken and put that, and then eventually we can start to modify things, not unlike a bass or music. And my mom, she was a really good cook. And when she was around, I would understand. And she was a cook, not a chef. So she could take almost anything and make a meal out of it.
Comfort food.
And I've had situations with my wife and I where, let's eat. What do we got? Oh, man, I don't know. Hold on a second. And I would whip something up and it would be worthwhile. So, and the cooking thing, I think is an important thing to do because we've lost a lot of sitting down together for a meal as a family. That's not as extensive.
Agreed.
No.
Very agreed.
And just the social aspect of cooking together with people and eating food quality. I mean, food is going to be your life. That's what's going to sustain your life. Yes. And to be involved in it with other people and care enough about it to use components that are really healthful. It's a big deal. So we cook a lot at home. Organic, almost everything that we do. We're meat eaters.
Big organic.
Yeah, we're meat eaters, but responsibly raised, grass-fed, organic, humanely raised sources of meat and eggs and that. So, but yeah, I think it's an important thing, and you get to improvise like you do as a musician, where let's try. Hey, coriander, what's that? I don't know. Let's try that. Never again.
Never again.
I know these are
mistakes too, man.
I know they're non-based questions that we're not kind of venturing off to now because I'm enjoying the fact that you cook. Do you have a garden at your home?
No, because we're in the woods, and I probably could clear a little spot and put a raised bed in. I'm thinking about getting a greenhouse, but in the woods, all bets are off. I planted 200 bulbs of all these great flowers
Okay.
Two of them came
Deer
up.
got him.
Wow.
The shrews and the moles and the chipmunks and the so.
Yeah, that's really
I don't.
wild.
If
Well,
I
Mike-
had a chance, yeah, we're on a slope and we're in the woods. I may do a raised bed or I may do a greenhouse at some point where I can protect it from all my creatures because feeding them isn't enough. They'll continue to eat everything around them.
Yep. It's funny that you mentioned that because my ex and I used to do raised bed gardens as a community service for different underserved communities. And the one thing that we learned, well, if I learned from my grandfather, who was from the South, he says, when you plant, you got to plant enough. He goes, 2/3 for you. He goes, well, one third's going to go bad. Another third is for you. And then another third is for the animals.
Wow.
Because they got to go in there and they're going to basically have their share of it. And there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, they were there first. And my chipmunks, they're all over the place.
Oh, he feeds chipmunks peanuts. He's like Dr. Doolittle.
I haven't gotten. I'm still working on the crows. The crows still don't trust me, and they see
Crows
me.
trust themselves.
Crows will recognize your face, so I make sure they see me that it's me, and I'm putting everything down, and they're watching me in the tree. And one recently started to come down, and when they see us in the window of the house as we're walking around, they usually take off. But this one's been staying, so I think once one does it, they'll communicate that to them. So my goal is to be able to.
You used to take fascinating pictures of an owl. There was an owl that was perching. That was fascinating to see the pictures. I mean, we have owls. I'm in the woods too, and we have a gray fox, and every now and then you hear a coyote. Or I got photos of a 6-foot bear eating off my bird feeder. But it's just amazing how the wildlife around you accepts you as a neighbor.
That's pretty cool. Well, we had a coy wolf.
Wow. Oh, the shriek of those things will shock you out of bed.
And the deer were on our lower driveway, looking up the hill. My wife was watching. What the heck are they looking at? Sure enough, they came running down, and the deer ran. So they're chasing. It's definitely bigger and fatter than a coyote. I've seen.
It's a crossbreed between supposedly a domestic animal and a coyote. So. Yeah. You know, who knows those things? When those things scream, you don't know what to do.
Crazy.
All right. So my final question to you is this: what would you tell an aspiring bass player or aspiring musician in general? What advice would you give to them for them to? Because you sustained an awesome career of 40+ years. I mean, like that's.
Yeah, I'm very grateful, and I think the big three: get in a band. Mm-hmm. Get in a band with songs. Mm-hmm. Get in a band with songs that you sing.
Really?
Oversimplified, but it's not.
Okay.
To get in a band is a big deal. You're working with other people now. Now you got to deal with attitudes and characters and personalities, and you have to learn how to deal and get your idea across to somebody else who may not like it, or play something of somebody else's that you don't want to play, but figure out a way to do it. It's all that little interaction thing brings about a personality that has value in a band, where you know when to give and take, know when to open your mouth and when to keep it shut, and things like that. And that helps a band stay together. And the longer and better a band is together, the better your chances are of becoming successful. Get in a band with songs. A lot of guys get together and they play, but you need songs. Sure. And songs can be copy tunes. Like I said before, every art form, they copy the great masters before they go on and do their thing. Sure. In architecture, in oil painting, in literature, it's done in every art form. In movies, how many great directors we have now that used to copy other directors because they loved what they did so much. It's
true.
art. Language you learn by imitating the people around you. So get in a band with songs, and get in a band with songs that you sing moves you into a whole other ocean of possibility and fame and success. It's a whole other world. There will be instrumentalists that will make an incredible career and have an amazing success and are loved by millions everywhere. But once you get somebody that's singing and singing songs, I could play bass solos all week. Or we could play To Be With You. and I know where the bigger crowd is going to be.
Yeah.
It's an important thing to have songs, and it doesn't necessarily mean pop songs or swill or lightweight throwaway.
Well, even the Beach Boys, like California Girls, just
Brilliant.
brilliant. And what you added to it is just modernizing your role in it.
Yep.
Yeah, it's and then to be able to sing. So look at the bass players that did that. Paul McCartney in a band with songs that you sing. Geddy Lee in a band, songs you sing.
Yeah.
Chris Squire, band, songs sing.
Yeah. Jack Bruce.
Jack Bruce, man, John Appleson, even Flacco on his first record, he had the Isley Brothers singing.
Yeah.
So it really is a formula for success. Learn songs that you sing, and we'll get in a band first, but to learn songs is and get in a band that you sing with. It's so important. And when we were looking for a drummer for Mr. Big to replace Pat, who sadly passed away, we miss him dearly. We needed somebody that could sing like Pat because we needed that voice in our harmonies. And man, that was tough to do. We found Nick DiVirgilio, and he is amazing. He sings his ass off. His nuance is very much like Pat as well, as little small little finesse things that he does. Brilliant. So he's probably the only guy I know really that could really, maybe two or three other guys that I know of, but Nick came in and did that gig, and it's very important that he sings. And so many times we'll be, hey, I'm a guitar player. Really? Oh, right. You're fantastic.
But do you sing?
No.
Yeah, no.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Billy
Sheehan. Fantastic. Thank you for coming out today.
Thanks for having me on. Well, we can do it again sometime.
Thank you very much.